System, Chapter 4, from my book, Debt Freedom Reign. An American money system could and probably should be called a people's monetary system, but I only understand my form of government, so I only had my form of government to apply this monetary system to. I'm sure that the three foundational principles of this monetary system of spend, not borrow money into existence, banking as a public service, and stating trade tariffs can be applied to any form of government around the world. First and foremost, for the health of our nation, production and trade need to be secured. This is true for every nation on earth. Being able to sustain oneself independently without assistance from another country is halfway to being sovereign. The other half is creating your own money for yourself to use, interest-free. But I'll get to that in a second. First, let me address how we and every nation on earth can secure production and trade in our own countries. The answer is by instating trade tariffs. In an American money system, trade tariffs need to be instated at both the state and national levels in the United States. This would secure jobs and commerce in America, as well as providing a revenue source for those two branches of our government. The other half of sovereignty and the surefire way to maintain our country's money supply in equal proportion to its volume of production and trade is for our country to spend its own money into existence for itself to use interest-free. That way, a $13 trillion gross domestic product, or GDP, would spend into existence a $13 trillion interest-free money supply to facilitate commerce. The importance of the money being interest-free is that interest is a sin, it devalues the currency, is a way for lenders to take over a nation's money supply, and without interest, the currency does not have to be taken out of circulation. If GDP remains at $13 trillion, then the money supply will remain at $13 trillion also, because that is how it came into existence, by being spent into existence by production and trade. If GDP increases, then the money supply will increase naturally also. If GDP decreases, well, it shouldn't decrease. That's why you got the tariffs. But in the event that it does decrease, the fix is getting our country producing its own goods again. Fix what's wrong with our country's production and trade. There is another fix. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of we the people producing our own goods and services. The other fix is what I think is the ultimate control to inflation and deflation in an American money system, and that is public banking. This means shutting down all private banks and commandeering them as branch offices of our government's treasury, where the common business of banking can continue but at no cost to the people, because in an American money system, banking is a public service. All of the commandeered banks nationwide operating as branch offices of our government's treasury, taken together, operate as one large national bank with our nation's money supply in its vault. So then, imagine that the national money supply is $13 trillion. As is the case today, most people leave their funds in a transaction account at a bank instead of having cash on hand. In my vision of a public banking system through a government's treasury, the government that can print money when it needs to can also access the funds in the money supply held at the government's treasury vault if it needs to also, instead of printing more money. The money that the government uses to pay its bills is more than likely going to be deposited back into the treasury vault through a commandeered branch office. The money will essentially remain in the vault and an access account to the money supply would be created in accordance to the terms of the government contracts. This ability for the government to access the funds in the Treasury vault that are not in their own account is one way to stave off inflation of a currency because no new money is being created. Let's imagine that $13 trillion of a $13 trillion national GDP is, let's imagine that $3 trillion of a $13 trillion national GDP is government expenses. That means that the other $10 trillion was spent into existence through regular commerce. That means that with the government's ability to access funds in the public vault that are not really in its own accounts, that a money supply of $10 trillion will be able to spend commerce of $13 trillion or greater without deflation and simultaneously staving off inflation. Essentially, this is a fractional reserve. The fractional reserve rule for an American money system is at least 2 real dollars in the Treasury vault for every $1 accessed in the Treasury vault by the people's government that they don't really have deposited in its own account. In an American money system, only the people's government can access the Treasury vaults without having to withdraw from their own accounts. Think of it like interest-free loans to our government by we the people for the sake of controlling deflation and inflation in our monetary system. And again, it's not really creating additional / fictional money, but creating an access account to the vendor who did business with our government to our nation's money supply. The natural decay of the paper money will serve as another way to stave off inflation. As the paper money deteriorates, it is to be taken out of circulation and recycled for new money if needed. The decision to replace the worn money will depend on the needs of the economy. If the economy is balanced or signs of possible inflation show, then the money should not be replaced, but if signs of deflation come up, then the money should be replaced. As previously stated, in an American money system, the tariffs being charged by the state and national governments are to be one source of revenue for those two branches of government. The other source of revenue for those two branches of government is the bills that they charge their supporting governments. For the national government, what it charges the state governments, and for the state governments, what they charge their county governments. In an American money system, only the county governments can order the national treasury to print money. This variable of allowing the national and state governments only two revenue sources, tariffs being the first one, and the funding from their state and counties being the second, is the ultimate insurance to secure a bottom-up, for the people, by the people form of government. In this manner, the counties are the supreme sovereign. In this manner, the counties are the supreme sovereign, delegating authority to the states and national governments as I think is the intention of our Constitution. For the county governments, along with the sovereign authority to order the national treasury to print money, another revenue source that they have in this monetary system is the monies being returned to the public trust and corporate charters. This is what I mean. Since banking is now a public service for and by the people, then we the people do not borrow our own money. We order it. Instead of taking out loans in my monetary system, we place money orders. Of course, the money is being ordered from the public trust, so it has to be collateralized by a thing of 10% greater value. This 90% order to value ratio, as well as physical collateral, is all the insurance this trust needs. The money would be ordered at the county level by the people and the counties, created by the Treasury, then used and then returned by who ordered it, interest-free, in monthly increments to the public trust. This money being returned would be one source of revenue for the county governments. The other source of revenue for the counties in this monetary system is annual corporate charters, where the companies have to prove annually that they are operating in the public's best interest. This is health insurance for the counties. So then, in this monetary system, the state and national governments earn as revenue tariffs and what they charge their supporting governments, which is ultimately the counties, as well as having the right to access our national money supply, as well as having the right to access our nation's money supply held in the Treasury vault. At the county level, the county governments have as revenue sources the money being returned to the public trust, as well as corporate charters, and the ability to order the national treasury to print money if they need to, as well as having access to our nation's money supply held in the Treasury vault. With all this access to money at all three branches of government, the people in an American money system do not pay taxes or tolls or any fees for any government service whatsoever. The servant government freely and lovingly serves the master, we the American people that gave it life. Also, in an American money system, our government can accept gold and silver bullion, as well as other precious metals like platinum and the like, for payment on tariffs and charters. The metals deposited into our government's accounts, like gold and silver bullion, nickel, copper, etc., are to be minted into coins in accordance to the weights and measures decided upon by our people's Congress. The metal coins are to be circulated alongside the paper money in an American money system. On the local level, local county currencies are to circulate alongside the national money in the local economies. Local county currency is more health insurance for America's counties. The other metals and assets deposited into our treasury that cannot be minted into coins, as well as the currencies and other countries' acceptance or not of our money, will be how our government pays its bill internationally. In an American money system, our government can never again borrow. It has to pay as it goes. In this monetary system, the income to our government will eventually be so great that a surplus will be produced. When this happens, dividend checks are to be paid out according to age and population. The older you are, the more you get. The younger you are, the less you get. The number of people in our population will determine how many it will be divided amongst. Political careers will rise and fall depending on how well the politician can preserve the value of money. Politicians will be forced to spend wisely versus frivolously, as is the case today. Today, politicians spend frivolously because they work for the owners of the money and the country, the Fed bankers. The more the politicians spend, the more they borrow from the Fed, the more indentured Americans become to the Fed, and the weaker the Fed note becomes, setting it up for collapse and leaving America impoverished. President Thomas Jefferson warned that if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. It is essential to always keep in mind that there is nothing wrong with the Federal Reserve System simply because it is doing exactly what it was created to do from birth. It was purposely created to consume the wealth of our country, put it in the hands of the Fed bankers, and then collapse. All the tinkering in the world will not fix what is not broken. All the bailouts or rescue plans or stimulus packages or any other kind the Fed's politicians come up with will not fix their monetary system only because it is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was created to do: impoverish America and enriching the Fed bankers. The only real answer to our country's economic dilemma is to end the Federal Reserve and institute an American money system. That was chapter 4 of Debt Freedom Ring, an American money system. The entire book was built around that chapter. That's the most important chapter in it. It's the answer, to the current economic situation we have. We just changed the economic system, and we could put one in place that serves the people instead of the Federal Reserve bankers. Novel idea, right? An economy in America that serves the American people instead of the Federal Reserve bankers, which is a private bank owned by offshore bankers. See the rest of my videos and learn more. Buy the book. It's on lulu.com, Lulu.com. It's only $7. Background music provided by my bird. All right, take care.